Okay, we're live. Testing, testing. Today on Quality Time with Family Ties, we learn this episode of Family Ties was brought to you by Thornton Wilder.
And in 3, 2, 1. Hey everybody, welcome to Quality Time with Family Ties. I am one of your hosts, Scott Jones. Joining me as always, back from last week, Paul Packler. We're glad to have you back, man. We missed you last week.
I'm glad to be back. I miss you. I didn't miss the episode. I listened to what you guys recorded. Whoo, boy.
Yeah, you would have had a lot to say.
Yeah. I just screamed it along while listening to the podcast. Corey,
and
how are
Corey
you
Pepper, how are you, man? Yeah.
I am terrific. Everything is great. Boy, you certainly gave this episode a big build-up, didn't you guys?
Yeah,
well,
we did.
I mean, Corey, we may very well have the most listeners to this episode because today we're reviewing. Oh, I'm getting a lot of feedback.
Yeah, pause for a sec. Yeah, I'm hearing it. It sounds like it's coming from your computer, Paul.
I know. It sounds like it's your feedback, Paul.
That's so weird. So weird. Hold on a second. Can you hear me now? Am I echoing? Yeah.
Yeah.
I hear you.
Yeah.
Here, Scott, you talk.
Testing.
Testing.
1, 2.
1, 2, 1, 2.
Yeah. Hello. I heard feedback on. Yeah, I heard feedback coming from your. Yeah.
Here, try it again.
All right. Testing. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? It's still feedback. Yeah.
Here, Corey, you say something.
Testing.
So weird. I'm sorry, guys.
No, it's okay, dude.
Now I'm not getting it.
I didn't hear it back then. Yeah, now I don't hear anything.
No.
Okay.
Whatever you did worked.
Start again.
Yeah, let's just do it again. All right.
You're it. Go ahead, Scott. Oh, now it's echoing again. God damn it!
Oh, holy shit. Is it where you're placing the computer?
I'm not doing anything. Scott, say something.
Testing. 1, 2, 1, 2. No feedback. No feedback. Can we hear anything? What's going on?
Say something loud, Scott.
Testing. Hello, welcome to Quality Time.
One quick thing. Just say one quick thing.
Welcome to Quality Time with Family Ties.
I hear an echo from you.
From me?
Yeah.
It's gonna be weird.
God damn it. I'm gonna stop and start again.
Wait, hold on. Let me try something here. Hold on. Let me see what's going on here.
Hello, testing. 1, 2.
That's weird. All right.
Do you think it has anything to do with the fact that, Corey, you're not using headphones on your end?
Well, we've had that before. Let's see.
I know. But it happens sometimes in other episodes.
Let's see.
Do you have headphones by any chance, Corey? Okay. I just want to test it.
Testing.
After this, I'll just shut it down and start again.
Yeah. Testing.
That definitely could be the issue because the volume is coming back and going through your microphone.
How's this working now?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yep. I hear you good.
I don't hear any echo. That might be it.
That might be it. Okay.
Paul, you might have solved it.
Oh, good.
What? Oh. I can't believe it was the right one and the wrong one. Okay.
Testing.
Thanks,
We
Logan.
did it.
That yellow is that.
Thank you, Logan.
Is that? Oh, thanks, Logan.
What is it? What's the thing?
He came over and he showed me where the microphone was on the.
You're like chewing on the thing. Like, oh, this is great.
Relax.
He wanted to make sure I didn't stick it in my mouth or ejaculate on it.
I mean, that's a pretty safe assumption that you're going to do that.
Yeah.
He knows me pretty well.
Yeah. What is that? Remote control?
There's no jizz on the controls. Please, Dad. God damn it.
Oh, Dad, I just got a new car. You want to see it?
Jesus.
All right, so let's just start from the top.
Let's just start this whole thing over again.
You're watching along, which thankfully no one is.
Yeah.
We're just gonna start.
All right.
Today on Quality Time with Family Ties, we learn A, my name is Alex. B, my name is Ballix.
3, 2, 1. Hey, everybody! Welcome to Quality Time with Family Ties. I'm one of your hosts, Scott Jones. Joining me, Mr. Paul Packler. Welcome back, Paul.
Thank you. It's good to be back. I missed you guys. I did not miss the episode because it was apparently terrible, but we're here for a great episode. Corey, aren't you excited?
Yeah.
You know, I'm kind of debating, gentlemen, of whether to show my hand this early in our podcast. I thought maybe I would try and play it a little closer to the vest as things went on. And then there'll be a moment during the show, and it's not an Andy moment this week, when my head will fucking explode.
Oh,
Wow.
This is going to be
Now,
great.
Corey, this is an episode, it's a famous episode of Family Ties. We might have new listeners who are listening to us for the first time just for this episode. Do you think they're going to be able to tell when your head explodes?
Oddly enough, I do think they're going to be able to tell. But if we do have new listeners, I think we should explain, if they're not watching on YouTube, we should explain the vast age difference between us.
Right. Well, first off, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just saying, I'm an old man. I'm 60, and Paul and Scott are young men in their early 30s.
Right, that's very true, except for the early part.
Yeah.
Right. I was being generous. I thought,
thank
who cares?
So this is the episode A, My Name is Alex, which is arguably the most famous episode of Family Ties, other than, I would say, the Ned is an alcoholic.
It was named by TV Guide magazine as one of the 100 greatest episodes of television of all time. And I'm fairly sure they were having some sort of an anthrax incident at TV Guide when this happened.
I'm amazed that TV Guide even exists anymore now that there's the internet.
Yeah.
It really doesn't exist. It's a channel. It's the grid. When you put on your TV, that's TV Guide.
Yeah.
This is the episode. This is one of the reasons Paul and I wanted to do this show, and also the reason why Corey Pepper regrets ever meeting us.
Yeah, this is a very special episode. Capital V, capital X. In the 80s, you had a lot of these where there was kids getting abducted on different strokes, or what else? People getting divorced. Maude had an abortion on Maude, the TV show with B. Arthur. Usually it was a comedy, a sitcom that took on a very heavy topic. Other, different strokes had tons of them. There was drug abuse. There was all kinds of stuff. This is sort of the king of all special episodes.
It is. But I want to try and break this down just a little bit as to what shows organically could and should have special episodes, and what types of shows organically shouldn't ever touch a special episode. An example, Full House. Now, we really don't want to watch a special Full House where Danny Tanner decides to examine life and existentialism, and why is he here, and why does he have children, and why does he live with Uncle whoever the fuck he was living with.
Joey and Jesse.
Thank you. Exactly. We don't want to watch a special episode of Full House. Now, on the other hand, All in the Family deftly did special episodes. They did it so deftly that Edith could be raped in an episode, and the episode would still work on both a comedic and a dramatic level.
That's the thing. I mean, I would say a lot of these very special episodes came from the 70s, where you had Norman Lear, who ran, half a dozen different sitcoms over the decade.
That's right.
Were all very, they would run the gamut of drama to comedy and intelligently cover heavy issues, political issues, all that kind of stuff. And in the 80s, I feel like everyone else sort of caught up to what Norm and Lear did, but they couldn't do it as well. And that's what all these very special episodes that we see in the 80s are.
We've mentioned on this show, over and over again, whenever Gary David Goldberg wants to deal with what would be a hot button topic of the day, of the 80s, those episodes are way clumsier than the episodes that just deal with the Keatons.
Yeah. As soon as they start getting out of their normal range of where they feel comfortable, a lot of stuff starts falling apart quickly.
Yeah.
Let's face facts. This is a family comedy. It's a light family comedy. It's an 8:30 family comedy. And for them to try and impose depth upon this family, and every time they try to impose depth, they trip over their own feet. This show plays like, how old were you guys at the time?
Oh,
6.
Yeah, 7.
You were 6.
7, 8, yeah.
This show plays like a short man's wet dream of what good acting should be.
What does that mean? What does the short part enter into it?
Well, because you two guys, I think both of you had a Michael J. Fox fantasy.
Well, I mean, I didn't know we were going to get this deep into it.
Wow,
All right.
okay.
Let's roll up our sleeves.
And
Okay.
I think that as part of the Michael J. Fox fantasy, even at 7, or if you saw it again later, you knew in your hearts that both of you wanted to be actors. You were attracted to the business, and you saw this as the pinnacle of short guy good acting.
I think that's
There's
true.
some truth to that. That's fair. That's fair.
And
I
I'm
think
here to
also-
tell you in 2017, this episode is a turd.
All right. So
Let's jump into it.
two things.
That was me holding my cards close to my vest, by the way.
First off, we say all this. This episode won the Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Writing for a Comedy Series in 1987. It won.
Have to know the other nominees. I have to.
Let's look
Wait.
it up. Well, Paul
I thought I
talks.
pulled it.
I am.
Oh, I closed the thing. But wait,
Oh,
it also won a Humanitas Prize.
God,
Fuck is a humanities prize.
it's
It
good.
won
That's a good one.
A
it get a-
WGA award, the Writers Guild Award for Best Screenplay.
Oh my God, no Peabody.
It won. Wait a second. The Directors Guild Award.
Okay.
It won Primetime Emmy for Outstanding Directing, and it got Technical Direction and stuff Emmy, and that's it. And I think it arguably is the episode that got Michael J. Fox an Emmy for acting that year too. So
Yeah.
I agree.
Yes,
They
definitely.
usually submit one episode for the Emmy Awards, and clearly this would be the episode.
So even
in-
though we think now, with hindsight, that this is a not great episode, more or less, at the time it was a very popular episode.
This is the 1987 Emmy Awards.
87.
Mhm.
So, start us off, Scott.
All right, so if you're playing along at home, we are on season 5, episode 23, I believe.
21.
20? Is it 21? Wow.
Yeah, because this is 2 episodes together and all that stuff.
Okay, so it's My Name is Alex, a 2-parter, and we start off. Jennifer is raising Andy again. It's like last week. Hey, you got to, a couple weeks ago, you got to sing your song, you got to have a good time, and now you're back to raising this kid.
Yeah, it's amazing. Throughout this season, we've really seen Jennifer. This is for people just listening. Jennifer has been raising Andy because the writers don't want to give Jennifer any sort of characteristic or stuff to do in an episode. She had one episode where she fronted a rock band, and that's it. And otherwise, she's been JV mom.
They put her every scene she's with Andy, helping him out. And we come to find that the rest of the Keaton family has gone to a funeral for Alex's friend Greg, who was in a car accident.
Now,
Yes.
may I ask a question?
Yes,
Why
Corey.
couldn't these lazy-ass writers have introduced a character who we had met before, or had had the foresight earlier this season to introduce Greg in a second episode so that we as an audience would at least give a shit?
That's my first note. And you know who it should have been? It should have been James.
Mm-hmm.
That's who you should have killed. Kill him.
That would have been interesting. I mean, he's been gone for a while, so they could have like introduced him for a couple episodes or whatever.
Yeah. I mean,
I think you could have killed Skippy, honestly.
that would have been amazing.
You know what?
My
I
God.
admire people who kill regulars or kill recurrings on shows. I admire them. It takes balls to do that.
That would have been so impactful if they killed Skippy. I probably would be crying if they killed Skippy.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, Greg is much more connected to Alex and his relationship with Greg, but Skippy, it would have had ramifications for all the different characters. He's touched and had episodes where he had plot lines with all the different family members. That could have been pretty cool.
And the audience. We would have all been upset with Skippy gone.
Yeah.
Ah, Paul, that's brilliant.
But, you know, I want just to mention one other thing about the Emmy Awards that year, now that I've got it up in my little hand.
Okay.
It appears as though all of the comedy nominations were all 5 NBC shows. First of all, so you can see that there was a tidal wave of NBC love in the Academy that year. The nominees were Golden Girls, Cheers, Cosby, Family Ties, and Night Court. 4 of them on Thursday nights, 1 on Saturday.
Wow.
In the acting category, he was up against Harry Anderson from Night Court, Ted Danson from Cheers, which just on the surface, I want to kill myself that he beat Ted Danson in an Emmy Award. Bob Newhart from The Newhart Show. And here's how you know that it's not that big fucking a deal that Michael J. Fox won an Emmy Award. He beat out Bronson Pinchot as Balky on Perfect Strangers.
The fact that Perfect Strangers anything was nominated for an Emmy, I don't think you can have the Emmys anymore.
Oh, God.
The only good thing I can see from these Emmy Award nominations is the fact that Justine Bateman was nominated that year as Best Supporting Actress.
Oh, wow. Did she win, or was she just nominated?
She lost to Jack Hay on 227.
Wow. I mean, I love 227. I love that show. But that's weird. I always thought that Family Ties was a lot earlier and 227 was a lot later. But, yeah, I guess it makes sense they ran at the same time. It just...
Yeah.
I don't know.
And
I'm wondering.
I was going to say the director of this episode lost to Golden Girls. Was nominated, but lost to Golden Girls. And Gary David Goldberg and Alan Uger did win for Best Writing in a Comedy Series over an episode written by Jay Tarsis, oddly enough.
Oh, we love Jay Tarsis.
Oh, Jay Tarsis.
From the Days and Nights of Molly Dodd.
Wow. I mean, this is a really good time for sitcoms on TV. I mean, I'm sure a lot of those shows don't hold up as well as we remember them, much like this one. But what a great... That's a lot of good shows.
Yeah. I'm wondering if the whole thing... Go for it.
I was saying the whole thing with the fact that we didn't meet this friend before, I just thought was lazy on the writer's part.
And, you know, and this is the other thing about sitcoms in the 80s. You have these episodic type TV shows, especially with sitcoms, where you have a guest star from week to week that then becomes their best friend like this, or any of these sorts of things. A friend from college that we've never heard of before. And that's just the nature of how shows used to be when you didn't really watch them as closely as we do now on TV. But it's really weird. And especially this episode just smacks of cynicism that it's like, this is his best friend that we've never heard of until today.
Right. And they hang their hat on that. Like, we're supposed to get emotional and feel something for Alex going through this for a character that we don't even know.
Right.
Everything's riding on that.
There must have been a turning point in TV history in which shows decided to build a universe
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? Build a universe is what they all do nowadays, and we're very used to that. That's why there are so many recurrings on television shows. You want to use characters 4 or 5 times. You want to build your town.
When do you think that would have been? Like Seinfeld might have been one of the first to sort of live in its world?
Other than Newman, I can't remember a real recurring. Well, I guess there was. There was Jay Peterman, and there was Newman.
Yeah.
And Putty.
Yeah.
Later on in the show, and Susan had a season and a half with George as his girlfriend.
Yeah,
and
the whole
father
NBC season,
yeah,
where they were pitching Seinfeld.
And then the Yankee season when George Steinbrenner was an off-screen voice the whole season. As George's boss.
I mean, it was definitely sometime in the 90s that with comedies especially, you start to have cumulative arcs.
Right. And I think that's sort of where we are nowadays, where they build a world so that, you know, when you're watching Modern Family and they say, oh, Pepper's coming over, we know Nathan Lane is showing up in a few minutes. And that's okay. He only shows up once or twice a year, but that's enough.
Mm-hmm. We see this world. Yeah, the universe has been built, whereas this is everyone outside of your regulars are very disposable.
And they've done that to us time and time again by giving us a big emotional moment with a character we don't give a rat's ass about. And you're going to care about somebody if you've met them a few more times. So it's just silly. Do
you think it's weird that Jennifer and Andy didn't go to the funeral?
Well, I don't think it's weird. I don't think you take Andy to the funeral. Of course, I question once again the selection of Jennifer to stay home and mommy Andy constantly. Why couldn't Jennifer have gone to the funeral and Mallory had stayed home?
Yeah, it seems like she's telling Andy about Greg having died, both for his benefit and the audience. And it seems like no one in the Keaton household has taught Andy what death is.
She has to do it.
This is the big moment that somebody finally had to tell the 4-year-old what death is. Sorry to spring this on you. And by the way, parent knows, explaining death, parents take on an unbelievably cheery attitude when you explain death to a child. You don't want to make it too morbid or too sick. Nope. Everybody dies. We all die. It happens to everything that's alive. And
it's not bad. It's okay.
And it's okay. Exactly. The it's okay. I always feel little guilt pangs when I'm saying it's okay. It's just fine. Don't worry about it.
It'll be okay.
But it's crazy because this girl, Jennifer, is like 15 or 16 years old, and it's up to her.
Right. So the family finally comes home from the funeral. It's Elise, Steven, and Mallory. They come in and they're all just, you know, morose. They just come back from funeral talking about how everything went. And they bring up, well, Alex, you know, well, everyone deals with death in their own way. And Alex comes in like, what a funeral. Boy, was it great. He's like wired. It's like he did a line at the funeral.
Well, it is 1987. It's Michael J. Fox, so
true. It's your best friend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Boy, they even say before he comes in, Alex is in shock. Like we're expecting for him to come in and for him to be in some sort of a catatonic state. And instead he's like pumped up.
Yeah.
The old switcheroo, Corey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Protecting your feelings, yeah. And we come to also find that the situation under Greg's death is Greg came over to Alex's place to get him to help move some furniture for his brother. Alex was supposed to be in the car with Greg to go, but Alex said he was too busy and couldn't do it, and so Greg drove off. They had a fight about it, and Greg drove off and was in a car accident.
This story is pretty malleable, which, as far as from the writing perspective, is pretty damning as to their talents.
Yes, it is.
First, we learn in this scene where they're talking about what happened, he said that he was busy and that he was selfish. He's like, you know, selfishness saved my life. I knew it would come in handy and all this stuff.
Yeah, right.
Then we have a Banquo's ghost scene right afterward. I just want to quickly go through these so that way we can, you know, follow everything chronologically. But in the Banquo scene where, spoiler alert, Gregor shows up. They have a little scene of what happened in the past, and he says that he was like an hour and 40 minutes late to come get Alex, and so now Alex has stuff to do. It's hard to tell if he's lying or not, but he's saying, you were late, and now I can't go with you. Then later, and Greg seems upset, but fine with this eventuality. Later, when he's in therapy, Alex says they had a fight, which we watched happen, and we didn't see a fight happen. So, as I said, the writing of what actually took place is really slipshod.
I wrote down that it seemed as though the Trump administration wrote this plot. It keeps changing every single minute. Whatever advantage they need at that moment, they just sort of massage the story that way or massage it a different way. And it just kept turning into something that I don't think they intended it to be. I think they intended it to be pretty straightforward. As it turned out, it was way too complex.
I don't know why they messed this part up.
Well, and it also trickles down into Alex's reasoning, because at first the reasoning is he's upset because he should have been in the car and died with Greg.
Right, but that's something that maybe an 8-year-old feels. You know, and I don't see how a grown-up. Why aren't you having the I understand having survivor's remorse,
right?
But why don't you even have a moment on television of, Jesus Christ, I really cut it close there.
Yeah.
It's not like
some appreciation.
It's not, man, I'm lucky and every moment's precious and I really need to go and adjust how I treat people. It's, no, I should have died with him.
Yeah, it's really weird. And that's the problem throughout this episode because of the changing storyline, it goes part and parcel. We don't know what Alex's problem necessarily is throughout the episode. Does he feel guilty and he's having survivor's guilt? Does he feel guilty for just being a jerk generally? Then we start to analyze whether or not he is too smart in the pressures of being a smart person, or that he works hard and the pressures of being that. Then there's the whole does God exist? And why are we all here? And so throughout this, hour-long episode, I don't know what the hell's going on.
Nope.
No, I don't either. I will give the writer some credit because throughout our whole run, we have talked about the psyche of Alex P. Keaton and this narcissism and selfishness. It's at least good to see the writers acknowledge that in some way.
This is as deep as you can get of acknowledging it.
That's about it.
Corey, do you want to talk about Alex and his sociopathy?
Well, I was impressed that the line, for once my selfishness saved my life.
Yes.
And I thought, okay, I wrote that down. I thought, okay, I was impressed that they at least acknowledged the fact that he may be the most selfish person we've ever met on television.
Yeah.
But then, he's such a sociopath that, okay, I'm going to say it. When he sits down in the shrink's chair in the second half of this episode, I don't give a shit. I just don't give a shit.
Corey, is it a little bit like what happens over time with Tony Soprano? That at first you're like, well, he must be a good person underneath, or that we're going to find something, and then there's nothing.
And we find out it is what it is.
That's a fair analogy.
That the whole time he's sitting there looking at Dr. Melfi, he's undressing her. That's all he wants.
Right.
Yep.
He just shows up every week hoping for pussy.
Yep. Yeah.
It's just Alex just well, the thing is, right before we get to the second act, we have the Banquo scene.
Yeah.
Right.
So all of the family leaves Alex alone in the kitchen, and he starts talking with Greg. We finally see what Greg looks like.
Right. Can we talk about how Greg appears for the first time, laying on the countertop, like with his hand in his hand?
Well, that's the first of what I would call the stylistic points that director Will Mackenzie added to this episode.
God.
And every stylistic point he added is just another plop of a turd in the bowl. It's so awful. This is the first one. And then in a minute, we meet Brother Timothy. That's the second stylistic point.
God.
And then, can someone explain to me the impassioned hugging that Michael J. Fox did upon Gregor?
It's
You know what? Every time he held on to dear Gregor, slapping him like they're football players, and holding on to dear life.
I haven't seen Greco-Roman wrestlers
Engage like that.
hug and slap in such homoerotic hugging and slapping.
I mean, I know he thought Greg was dead, and he sees him again.
Right.
But still, guys, you have my permission. If I die and I appear to you, you can just pat me on the back. You don't have to. Don't
Hey,
feel
Scotty, welcome
Yeah,
back.
hey, man. That's all.
Yeah, but you know what? I mean, throughout this episode, I mean, it's really egregious with Greg, but hugs Andy. He hugs Mallory for a really long time.
Yep.
Yeah.
He sure does.
He's going around the world hug fest.
He calls
It's
it
Michael
mommy
J.
way
Fox
too much.
Playing the relief of being alive. And that's what I mean. Everything is sort of ham-handed in this episode.
Somebody hold me too close.
Michael J. Fox's performance is ham-handed. It's heavy, and it's what it, remember when you started taking acting class, and there was always a girl who'd be sitting in the first row, and every time the male acting teacher said something, she smiled at him and nodded her head just a little too big. And the minute that he asked somebody to come up on stage and cry, she was ready to run up on stage and cry. And the minute he said, "You're not really free until you take off your shirt," she was the first one to pull her shirt and her bra off and shake her titties in the teacher's face.
And this is like Porky's meets Fame.
That's what this episode was. Everything was just so eager to be in an acting class and doing my acting on the set of Glass Menagerie, apparently, in the second act.
Oh my God.
That's what it was.
I mean,
it was Family Ties meets Glass Menagerie all of a sudden.
It really was.
But we're getting ahead of ourselves. We're having the scene between Alex and Greg where they're talking about what happened, and then they start acting out the scene of him leaving. This is what we're talking about, where the fight doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
He says that he's running late and all this kind of stuff. But then he hugs him, and the kids run in and see him hugging nothing. So now we're starting to infer that Alex is having like a psychotic break. He's starting to see things. And the Keatons seem fine with that.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and it's so weird seeing that fight scene in the kitchen. It's really strange.
He wants the big thing is that Greg wants Alex to pick up a piano for his brother. So Greg has a brother. They're going to move a piano, which a piano, 2 21-year-olds, that seems like a lot.
It seems like a hell of a lot.
It seems like a lot, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then go ahead.
I was just going to say, and it took me a second to realize that they were having this fight in this was a reenactment of their fight. Like, Greg had just appeared to, like, it was so strange. But two 21-year-olds trying to lift the piano, and I guess his brother?
Yeah. We never see any of Greg's family ever.
Right.
And then so then the Keatons come in and they see Alex, and he's saying that he's inventing a dance called the Keaton Samba. And then we have our first commercial break. So let's take a break right now. And because this episode has some interesting commercial breaks that we'll talk about when we get back.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a cliffhanger if I've ever heard one. We'll be right back. And we're back. And we have a close-up of Alex P. Keaton where he's talking about life and why we're all here.
Mm-hmm.
And then the camera pulls back to reveal Brother Timothy.
Who is dressed as he's a monk. Not just like a priest, but a full-on monk. They went really big with this goddamn monk.
What can you even say? This is the weird. So I had this episode that I had taped off TV at one point from Nick at Night, and it was in syndication, and they had excised this scene And I have to say, the episode is a lot better without this scene.
I would imagine so.
They don't eat, like, you have this big, choice of this monk in full regalia, and no jokes for him at all. There's not a single funny thing that Brother Timothy says. So if you're going to go that big, you better have something funny for this person to do. And they have nothing.
And they just are obsessed with the fact that Alex wants to have sex and monks cannot have sex. It's like he invited this monk over just to say, "Hey, you can't fuck, monk."
Yeah, they have Skippy come in too for this. I'm actually impressed that they cut this scene. You're right. It's a completely worthless scene. So much better without it.
It sets up the whole God thing, but other than that, it just feels like this is a scene in order to make it really light, because soon we're going to get into the one-act play, and so what can we have funny before we get there?
Right, but they don't deliver on that.
Yeah, we have the mom and dad, Stephen and Elise, come in the front door, and Alex is trying to get the monk to leave before they see him because he's embarrassed. And then Stephen says that the monk rode in on a, he's like, so that's your donkey out front. So, like, who is this monk? Anyway, so then we fast forward to, again, in the kitchen, another Banquo scene. And this time, Greg is doing what? Oh, no, this is the orange juice, you guys.
Yeah. This is where he's like, hey, you at least could, make me, offer me something to eat. And Alex he's like, I didn't know the etiquette for this. And so he goes to the refrigerator, grabs some deli meat, grabs some bread, grabs some mayonnaise. And I know you guys were like, is there going to be orange juice? Is there going to be orange juice? And yes, the last thing he pulls out of the refrigerator is the Keaton family orange juice. Yeah. Does he pour one does Greg drink it?
I don't think he drinks it.
Yeah.
No. At the top of the scene, when Alex is studying, he has a glass of orange juice, and he's tapping it with his pencil, and he spills the orange juice.
In a really clumsy bit of physical comedy.
Yeah.
And then he blames God for it.
And there was like this much orange juice in it, and just tapping it wasn't enough to get the glass over, so he actually lays the fucking pencil on it and knocks it over with the pencil. It's just ham-handed again.
And you know what he does immediately? He blames God. He's like, oh,
yes, he does.
As if it weren't enough to lose my best friend. Orange juice, God.
That's kind of big ends of the spectrum right there.
Yeah. Now, on
and then
this
Mallory.
Oh, good.
Yeah. I was going to say Mallory shows up here and has a scene with Alex, trying to be sympathetic to the fact that he lost a friend.
Yeah. But it's kind of like halfway sympathetic, because she's kind of joking about it. And this is where, like, by the end of this scene, after Alex is done talking with Greg and Mallory comes in, Alex has like a full-on breakdown.
He's screaming, "Why am I alive?" And he's crying, and Stephen and Elise hug him as he's sitting there in the drafting table. And I don't know, of all the moments in the show, I thought this one was kind of touching. Just that the survivor's guilt that's happening in this moment, where he's saying that he's like, to Mallory, that he was saved by smallness and all this kind of stuff. I don't know, there was a certain amount of like sincerity in the scene and the performance that I was like, oh, that works. It was surrounded by a bunch of garbage, but I thought that to me was affecting.
I kind of liked that the writers gave him the line, kind of going back to, my selfishness, how he described himself as small. Like, I'm a small person.
Right.
I thought that was good. And then, is there another commercial break?
There is. So what happens is, this is the second commercial break, and then famously in this episode of Family Ties, Gary David Goldberg went to NBC and said, I want no commercials in this episode. And they were like, yeah, we're not going to do that. And he goes, all right, well, I want no commercials once we get to the play part of everything. And they're like, that's fine. So in this episode, here we go to commercial again. And then for the rest of this next, 35, 40 minutes, there's no commercial breaks.
Can we stop referring to it like a play, like it's actually good and artistic, and start referring to it as the hokey sketch that it is? Like the drama club that it appears.
Right. Yeah, this is definitely the camp talent show at the end.
Because while Glass Menagerie is indeed a play, that play with family ties is not a good idea.
Corey, okay, so here we are. We're in the therapy play.
Let's describe what Alex is sitting in front of.
This is what I want. Yes, please.
It's impressionistic at best. He is sitting in front of, he is on a chair, sitting in front of the silhouette of a window.
Because he's going to look through there into himself.
Yep.
And ladies and gentlemen, that's it. That's what we got here. Alex in a leather chair in front of the silhouette of a window, listening to a disembodied voice. Do we know who the voice is, by the way?
David Wall.
Who's appeared on the show in 2 other segments, I believe.
And you loved him and thought he was great. I thought he was terrible. What do you think now?
Nah.
Okay, I'm on your side.
I mean, Corey, no, just for a second. Guys, this is the worst voiceover acting I think I've ever witnessed.
It's bad. It's really bad.
Like
it's very self-conscious.
Yeah, and he's really nasal. He sounds like Bob Dylan, and he's very monotone. He's just like, so how does that make you feel?
Yeah.
Alex, what's your problem? It's just like, what's going on?
No one will want to go to this therapist.
Yeah, why did he make that acting choice?
See, but yeah, that's exactly what we have. Michael J. Fox monologuing behind this silhouette of a window.
Yes, and then it's primarily. Oh, go ahead.
And then it's on a sound stage, however, and then periodically he'll mention something like my mother, and then a spotlight goes up on an area of the stage that isn't the Keaton Kitchen, but is sort of kind of reminiscent of the Keaton Kitchen if the Keaton Kitchen was in the Glass Menagerie. And so now he's got a little scene in an area with a spotlight with his mother in a fake kitchen, and then he walks back to the therapy chair and sits down and continues this 40 minutes of complete and total bullshit torture.
Yeah, this first sequence is him and Elise talking. He's like 7 years old, and he's in 2nd grade and obsessed with the Nixon, with Watergate happening at the time. Skippy comes in a Cub Scout uniform.
I thought it was interesting that Skippy, they asked him how long he was sleeping, because Alex stayed up all night thinking about John Dean's testimony in Watergate. Skippy slept 19 hours.
Yeah.
That was an interesting touch.
Yeah. I don't understand how this moment in Alex's life pertains to anything that he's dealing with right now.
No, and that's what if you're going to make this a play, if it's about, therapy and you're talking about different parts of your life and stuff like that, this episode is about survivor's guilt, or it's about Greg's death and dealing with what happens when you die. Mm-hmm. This is where it begins, that it starts to be about Alex and his relationship with his family instead of with Greg. Right. And they lose focus really fast.
Right. And then it shifts back into the therapist office, and then now we get the gimmick of anytime there's mention of a family member, it's going to shift back into some room in the Keaton household on the stage. And so the next one is Alex notices that the therapist went to Grant College and insults him. and realizing, well, my sister goes to Grant College. Cue Mallory, spotlight on her in her room. This was the weirdest scene. I have she's going on a date with Greg.
And it's tough to, because I mean, I've watched this a bunch of times. I don't know. Were you able to tell if it was that this is just part of like a dream? This conversation, like they never actually had this conversation.
Right. It seems like it was more of a dream.
Right. Why did she say she was going on a date with Greg? I'm not sure.
What's disjointing is you just had the Elise scene, which was clearly something from his past that had happened. And then you have what appears to be like a dream scene that makes no sense.
Right.
So it's really, it's so disjointed. I couldn't make heads or tails of it.
And so then Mallory's there. And you know what? I'll give Will McKenzie, the director, this. He's lighting things up and down. He's got a chair in front of a fake window and a disembodied voice and Michael J. Fox. And with that, I feel like the camera angles, how it's staged, all that kind of stuff is done very well, and it's always shot interestingly. Like the staging for this Mallory scene is that they're looking in a mirror. I mean, it's very play-like. But yeah, I don't know. I think that they did a lot, or Will McKenzie did a lot with a lot of hands tied behind his back to make it look interesting.
Yeah. I don't know if it's interesting or if it's just, I also get the feeling it was so stylized that it appeared interesting.
Yeah.
You know?
So Mallory says that she believes in reincarnation because of Shirley MacLaine.
I like that joke because that was when Shirley MacLaine was really big with her books and reincarnation and crystals and stuff.
Right. One of the best jokes about Shirley MacLaine, because they were making them all the time back in the 80s, is in Defending Your Life, the Albert Brooks movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's with him and Meryl Streep, and they go on a date. It's like when you die, you go to this, what do you call, where it's like in between heaven and hell.
Purgatory.
Thank you. And so while you're in purgatory, you have to defend your life like in a court case. And so everyone there is dead. They're trying to defend their lives. He meets Meryl Streep. They hit it off and start dating while they're in purgatory. And one of the places you can go, because you can go to the restaurants and eat, you never gain weight. They go to the Hall of the Past Lives Pavilion. And Shirley MacLaine comes up and introduces you to all your past lives. And it's just a nice joke, I thought.
It is good. So yeah, and then that's where this first half gets cut.
Well, that's the thing. This is not necessarily the way that the show premiered originally. This is just how it shows up when you're watching it on DVD or streaming or whatever.
Right.
So let's what happens next?
Trying to remember.
Well, what happens next after he sees the grant diploma on the wall? There's a scene with Mallory that includes him telling Mallory that he likes her, and Mallory telling him that she loves him. And very soon thereafter, it fades, and then there's canned applause, the likes of which I've never heard before. I believe they actually sweetened it with people screaming "Bravo," like he was doing a fucking production of Hamlet on Broadway.
Oh my God.
Wait, it is very terrible. But I just have to say, for the sake of the creators, this was not how the show aired. The strange cutting and the applause was sweetened and put in there, but that's only for home viewing, for DVD.
I was aware of that, and yet I still thought, once again, how ham-handed of them to throw in this unbelievable applause. And people... And it went on way too long. And I know that the episode aired as an hour-long episode, and this didn't exist.
Yeah. But yeah, it's very funny.
And all I could keep on thinking was, what a tour de force for Michael J. Fox.
That's what the Emmy people thought.
What a tour de force for him.
So yeah. Who's the next person up?
Jennifer, I think, right?
Yeah.
So, oh no, I'm sorry. Or isn't this where he goes to Steven and he says, why do we have to have another kid? We're having so much fun, just the three of us.
Oh, yeah.
And then they start playing catch, right?
Which is weird.
And Alex talks about, like, he's terrible at sports, which throughout the series, he's sometimes amazing at sports and sometimes terrible at sports.
I know, we've gone back and forth on that, like, what his ability level is.
Yeah, and so he's like, oh, I like... Steven's like, oh, do you like the Indians, the Cleveland Indians? Terrible name. And he's like, no, I like the Orioles because they're better at business and all this kind of stuff. And then we go to Jennifer, and Alex is pissed off that we have another sibling.
Right.
Now, what's interesting about the Jennifer scene is that she's in her room. Now she's into Bruce Springsteen, and there's some baseball photos up on the wall.
Way older, yeah.
And she's reading Kierkegaard lying on her bed, and she also loves Van Halen. But what's crazy is, throughout this series, we can never define Jennifer's character of what she likes and who she is as a person. And even in this episode, we don't learn anything new.
No.
She's completely, there's no, like, her relationship with Alex, it goes by the wayside, and there's no there.
And they could have revealed something about her, some insight into her, since this is kind of, surrealness and everything, but they don't do anything with it.
No, what they do, it's hilarious. He starts talking to Jennifer, and he's like, oh, what are you reading? Kierkegaard, blah, blah, blah. I like rock and roll music. Immediately, Alex starts talking to the audience and the therapist, and he says, this whole story about when he was a kid, he bought her cheap perfume, and she spilled it in her crib, and now every time he goes into a room, he smells it, and that's all he thinks about her. And then it becomes a thing of...
That was strange.
It's like how smell affects memory, and then the whole reason Jennifer existed was just for that smell story, so he can say, wet mittens smell like when I met Greg.
God, no,
that's
so
the whole point.
That's the whole point. And so we've gone through all the family members.
And now we're in class.
Right. With Greg?
And Mrs. Leahy, yeah.
Yeah.
Corey, can I ask you, do you feel bad about Alex B. Keaton being so smart that people don't like him? Like
I'm gonna tell you something that I feel really bad about. I didn't watch the second episode. I thought we were only doing one.
Oh, shit!
Oh, no!
I don't have a clue of what you're talking about.
Corey, this is amazing.
It's awesome.
Isn't this great?
It's awesome.
I thought we were just doing the first episode. Hey, my name is Alex. I didn't know we were going to... You guys see it as an hour-long episode.
But you see it as two parts.
Of course. That's the only time... That's what my only experience is as two parts. So I thought, we've always done it in two parts. Except for the clip show that we did in one part. So I don't even know what the hell you guys are talking about. Entertain.
All right. No, you know what? This is good. This is good. Because, Corey, there's the time 2 episodes ago when Jennifer started her band, and we were only going to watch
8 minutes.
a third of 8 minutes of the episode, and each of us would get a break. So, Corey, here is your holiday. Here's your vacation.
There you go. Caught up.
I'm loving it.
So, yeah, you just chime in. Scott, what happens next? So this is where we find out that Michael J. Fox was really smart in class, and that Mrs. Leahy kept showing him off to the other students, and we're supposed to feel bad about him. And I just want to talk about Alex P. Keaton a little bit, because people watching this or listening to us right now, they remember Alex P. Keaton as he's a Republican.
Right.
He loves money. He's smart. But he's charming because he's Michael J. Fox. He has tons of girlfriends, and he's very funny and physical, right?
Yeah.
But throughout the series, he's been a real big jerk. And I, chime in as much as, Corey, to attest to this.
He has. He's been a total...
Yes.
And we see, yeah, that the him being shown off kind of as a teacher's pet or the pride of the classroom, while he loves it, it also has created some rejection for him.
And it's also created the asshole that we've seen over the last 5 seasons.
A little bit.
Yeah. I mean, he's kind of like Ted Cruz, you know, where he
Yeah, I see what you're saying. It's exactly true.
he hates himself, but at the same time, the only thing that gives him like self-esteem at all is being so smart and cocky that he can show people that he's better than them, but then they hate him for doing exactly. It's like a snake eating its own tail.
Right, exactly.
But
Exactly.
and so this episode, and I want to talk about this a little bit. This episode is all about feeling sorry for Michael J. Fox. Like all of a sudden, or I'm sorry, for Alex P. Keaton, when this was supposed to be about stuff like that, this becomes an episode 4. Let's feel bad for Alex P. Keaton, and we've seen this before, where he is a jerk to somebody and then tries to like gaslight them and explain why he loves them so much. That's why he acts like a jerk.
Right.
Don't feel bad for an all-A student who's going to an Ivy League school, raised in a middle-class home with both parents, and is, you know, a dickhead Republican, and he hates women. He's like an anti-feminist and all this stuff. And this episode is trying to make us feel sorry for him.
He's had it rough,
And
but no. Yeah.
It's that ship has sailed.
It's very superficial.
Yeah.
Very superficial stuff.
And it's not, it doesn't need to be there, because what we should be talking about is how he is scared of dying, feels bad about his friend, all that
And his
kind of stuff.
actions. Yeah. Yeah.
We're wasting so much time.
Right. And then where do we go after the classroom? The second half I was up and down.
Yeah, it starts to weave a little bit back and forth. We start to meet who is it? Scott Valentine is Nick. That's Mallory's boyfriend. And we meet Andy, and so Scott Valentine comes in, and Nick is you know, sort of like Sylvester Stallone reject, and he's all like, hey, oh, oh, hey, and he's like an idiot. That's what they always make fun of him for.
Right.
And for no reason is he there except to remind the audience that rock and roll exists. And Alex, for as smart as he is, loves Born to Be Wild and The Doors.
Which he's never alluded to anything like that.
No.
He's like the 50s sock hop stuff.
Exactly. When he promoted Jennifer's band 2 episodes ago, he made them sing Mr. Sandman instead of singing a Debbie Gibson song or whatever.
Right. So that was strange.
It was. And so they have another scene with Greg that
Right.
if he and so what happens is they keep having these scenes where it's either dream talking of what he wished he could have said, and he's saying, you know, if you leave now, even though you're 15 years old, you're going to be 21, and then you're going to go and get into the car, try to pick up a piano and die. And
Yeah, and that's what was, again, going back to it, it was so hard to tell what this therapy session was. Dream, past experiences, life examination. It just went in so many different directions that I didn't know what the sum would be.
It seems like what you guys are saying is they tried to jam everything that they could jam that would make this a seriously perceived episode into one episode, and perhaps they should have just been a little bit more sparing. Simpler is always better.
Right, exactly.
yeah, if they had kept it one idea, this would have been a great episode. Right now, it's a great idea, but the way that they go about putting it into effect or putting it into practice, it's not working, and that's the thing that really sticks out.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And so,
And then this is the breakdown when we finally have Michael J. Fox breaking down a little bit.
he breaks down quite a bit, and this is where he starts talking about how.
Hold on, guys. Hold on a second.
Oh, listen.
Isn't it amazing? Yeah.
Little crying baby.
Oh.
Oh, what happened?
She can
see.
Okay, no, I want them.
Okay. Oh, you need to go put stickers on your
I
board.
want stickers. Oh,
It's okay. I'll be right out. Okay. All right.
fine, stay there.
Okay, Stanley.
Fine.
Did you just say fine?
He said fine.
Nice.
I might need to go soon, guys. It's getting a little crazy out there.
Okay. Yeah, we'll wrap this up in like 5-10 minutes. You know, it'll
Sure.
be yeah.
Okay. No worries. Picking it back up. Okay.
And so, yeah, things start to wrap up here, kind of. That like they start going from scene to scene, and Michael J. Fox is walking across the stage, lighting up, you know, all of the family members that we've talked about throughout this past 20 minutes. And
Right.
he's talking about, you know, the therapist is like, "Do you believe in God, Alex?" And it's like, whoa, why is this therapist asking this on session 1?
Right.
And he's like, I don't want to talk about it. But then he starts to talk about it, and he's like, you know, I don't think God is a guy with a long white beard sitting on a cloud. I think maybe he could be. And you know what's funny is when people talk about this, they say these sorts of things ironically about what it's like to be a freshman in college. Meanwhile, this is the heady portion of Family Ties. And so he's like, you know, oh, he could be a dolphin trading on the stock market. And, you know, I like to fuck girls, so that's why I could never be a monk. And
Right.
like,
So is God.
but then at the same, and so Michael J. Fox just keeps crying and crying and stopping crying and makes a joke, and then he cries some more. And this
Yeah.
is the part where it just starts getting exhausting. This is your favorite part of every Family Ties episode, Corey, where the lesson gets learned.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
I've discovered what the worst thing is not just the two people learning a lesson together and the apology, one person learning a lesson by themselves.
That's horrible. It's horrible.
That's worse.
It's so bad.
Absolutely.
There's
Yeah.
no one to play off of, and it's just him talking to the heavens. It's so bad.
No. And so, ultimately, Alex believes in God, which I don't understand necessarily why that matters.
Because nothing's connected. Nothing has connected from the start to the end of what they were trying to show with Alex P. Keaton.
Right. And then here's a little, like, David Foster Wallace footnote thing, is that in the episode, remember when they had that aunt that died, where Mallory freaked out at the funeral?
Oh,
and-
yeah.
And I said at the time that Mallory had that speech with, in the final scene with the mom, with Elise, and she said a lot of the same dialogue that Alex says now. And it's like they were sort of doing a dry run.
It's bring that stuff back. It was good, but have Alex say it. He can do it better because it's
Exactly.
Michael J. Fox.
So I thought that was funny. And so Alex is all like dried out, and he's like, you know, well, all my lessons are learned. And he's like, oh, I feel like I have so much more to say. And the therapist is like, well, why don't you sit down, get started?
Oh.
And Alex sits down and he looks at the camera and he says,
I forget the line. Paul, I was up
Oh,
and down for
Jesus,
this.
God.
You know this better.
oh
I'm
my
sorry.
God, that was like the scene in Back to the Future. I was like, you're lying, George.
What did he
Jesus,
say?
no wonder I was
What did he
never
say?
born. He sits down, he looks at the camera and he says, my name is Alex P. Keaton. Lights out. And then that canned audience applause, Corey. That's where it came from.
I was halfway like grabbing breakfast for Henry, and I just heard the canned applause at the end. I heard the therapist say, "What do you have to say?" And I'm grabbing cereal, and just hear the couple say, "Okay, thank God it's over."
Well, I just want to say to the listeners, now you guys have sort of a meta feeling of how this episode goes, where everybody else left, and it's all just Paul Packler acting by himself.
This
Corey.
was my name
Exactly.
is Paul.
That's this episode in a nutshell.
Yeah, it's like everyone goes away, and it's like, well, it's up to me. And I start crying.
What do you have to say,
Break down,
Paul?
Paul.
What do you have to say?
I don't know. What do you have to say, doctor?
So for questions and comments, be sure to write us at qualitytimewithfamilyties@gmail.com. You can get updates on our Twitter feed at QTWFT. We're also on Twitter. I'm at Follow Jones.
I'm at Paul Packler.
And I'm at Corpep.
And be sure to like our Facebook page. We like to thank Barbara Dillon, our producer at Fanbase Press. Fanbase Press is an online conglomerate of geek media, providing its readers with daily insights and reviews into the geek pop culture spectrum. Be sure to check out everything that they do. We also like to thank Perry Adams, who beautifully performs the theme song Without Us. Check out Perry's music at perryadams.com. We also like to thank Brian Dillon, Fanbase Press's president and also editor of our show. And lastly, Sean Foster, Fanbase Press's graphic designer, for designing our logo. Thank you, everybody, and we will see you next week.
Bye.
La, la, la.